Well, you keep mentioning the term destructive cult. Is there a particular reason for that? I mean, is there such a thing as a constructive cult, or is that just
Yeah, I think the Grateful Dead had a cult following. People practically worshiped Jerry Garcia. I mean, they named an ice cream after him. And there was this following of the Grateful Dead that they were called the Deadheads. And they would follow the Grateful Dead on tour from venue to venue. And they just were completely caught up in the music and the philosophy of Jerry Garcia and the group. But I don't think the group really hurt people. And so I would see it as a benign cult. There was an architect by the name of Paulo Solere, and he created a philosophy called arcology. And he built his own compound outside of Phoenix called Arcosante. And people would come there, they would apprentice, they would live there. It was a community. And Solere was very much this charismatic leader who was an object of worship, and people loved him. But I don't think he hurt anybody. So I think it is possible for a group to be a cult, to have a dominant, charismatic leader, for that leader even to inculcate his or her ideas and indoctrinate people in a way that would be parallel to thought reform or coercive persuasion. But then that final third criteria is doing damage to people, exploiting them, hurting them. And I think you can have two out of the three, still have a group that could be called a cult, but would better be referred to as a benign cult if you use that word cult.
wow? That's a really interesting way of thinking about it. I've only been to one Dead and Company show. Or did you ever check out the Grateful Dead while Jerry Garcia was still alive?
I was never a fan. And then after the Grateful Dead, after Garcia's death and things changed, and then some of those people followed the Fish. And you could say they were fish heads. But, there are people that can become very intensely devoted in a cult-like way to a person, a place, a thing, and they might be seen as a cult following, but not be a destructive cult. For the group to be considered destructive, it needs to be demonstrated objectively that it does harm, that it hurts people. And the groups that I deal with, that's typically abundantly clear.
Yeah, I mean the Deadheads were not hurting anybody, but definitely a little culty. People comparing. I've been to 30 shows, I've been to 40. It's like, wow, like this is really big for you, huh? And it must be nowadays with the internet. It must be way easier to lure people into cults, right?
Well, I mean, and talking about benign groups, you can also see CrossFit as a kind of cultish kind of thing, but not hurting people, getting people in shape. There's Soul Cycle, very similar kind of thing. And you can even look at the Apple Corporation when Steve Jobs was alive as being a kind of personality cult. But rather than hurting people, he made quite a few people rich and built them their corporate headquarters, which was almost like an alternate world that Jobs created. But I would say ultimately he was relatively benign, and he was not a destructive cult leader. So I think you can see that in many different forms in the world around us. But sadly, there are a lot of just really destructive cults, and the internet, social media, all the platforms that are now available to these groups to recruit and reach out and grab people. And for that matter, you can actually construct a cult without meeting with people personally and do it online, and people can Skype with you, they can send you money through PayPal, and it just goes on and on.
Yeah, but a lot of cults right now are are doing their Zoom meetings, getting those sessions in. That's the Steve Jobs thing is also a good example of a cult. I mean, he benign maybe, but also, I mean, the people who are jumping out the window in his factories, that's probably not entirely benign, right?
Well, I think you're talking about people in developing countries, people that are not working in Silicon Valley.
No, yeah,
Yeah,
but at the manufacturing plant where the iPhones are being made in China, they literally had to install nets outside the factories because so many people were jumping off and killing themselves.
that has, I've been to China a number of times, and that's an issue in China, is the working conditions for a lot of people and the stress. I wouldn't say it was only Apple. I would
Right.
say it could be a number of factories, a number of different employers, and the feeling of hopelessness regarding housing, uh, financial security, and the anxiety that people have in a country that has so many people and there's so much pressure to succeed.